listening to Joygasm, a video game and movie podcast. I'm Russ, Xbox Live Toaster 360. He's Steve, Xbox Live Stevavitch. And it's Independence Day in episode 129 today, July 4th, 2019. We have a bit of a freedom-oriented show for you today. Gaming news focuses on Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo sounding off on the trade tariffs. Movie news includes Henry Cavill in a new role, The Matrix 4 rumor, Paul Rudd joining a Supernatural cast, and Andy Serkis getting a role in another comic book movie. Technology news involves Johnny Ive leaving Apple. And our topic of the day is our Spider-Man Far From Home movie review, which you can fast forward to if you look at the timestamps located in the episode's detailed section of iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Otherwise, just keep listening. Steve, how are you doing over there, good sir?
Well, Russ, doing okay. You know, it's 4th of July. It's a good holiday.
Indeed it is.
Very colorful, very patriotic. Everybody's in high spirits. About as high as you can shoot a bottle rocket.
Ooh, pretty.
And about as high pitched as a packed Piccolo Pete.
Absolutely.
That's alliteration right there. Peep, 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 peep.
We had a fun 4th of July.
We did.
Overall, didn't we?
We did.
We started off, I started off the day going to the local parade with La Familia. Had a good time there. It's always good to be plugged into the local community. You almost joined us for that.
Yeah, I figured I'd just keep the morning simple, sweet, peaceful. You know, sip of coffee, watch the birds fly by, sing their songs, you know.
Fantasize like they're bald eagles flying by.
Yeah, like, man, bald eagles migrating this time of year?
I will say, I have actually seen a bald eagle fly here in Texas.
I know. There was one that flew right past the house. This was like either last year or the year before. I don't know. But I remember it flew there. We were like, that's an eagle. That's a bald eagle.
Yeah.
Wait, what is it? Okay.
I called mine George after George Washington.
Nice.
But yeah, after the parade thing, then we got the extended family together, had a little pool outing, which was a lot of fun. You know, it's good to be able to have some barbecuing, some splashing, the changing of many diapers of the grandchildren.
You know what we ought to do is we should get like a paper cutout of the American flag, and then put it like on our shoulder or our back, and then just sunburn that area. And so it's like a sunburn tattoo of the American flag.
And of course, we ended the day watching fireworks. As all good Americans should do. America, 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 America. And it was a lot of fun being able to see it. I was actually impressed by the amount of fireworks that were on display, but I gotta say, it was near and dear to my heart of hearts. Being able to look up there and say, freedom isn't free. There's a price and heavy fee.
A happy birthday to the country that I love. God bless America, America, America.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I do believe that America turned 241. I better double check that. Nice. I think I'm close. It's either it's like around 200. Let's see.
While you're looking that up,
how old is the United States of America?
What I was going to say before you just start figuring your talk right through me is that I watched
I was right, 241 years old. Continue.
John Adams clips from the HBO series.
That is a good series.
That is so unbelievably well written.
Agreed. And acted.
And acted, yes, of course.
I'm a big fan of the theme song as well.
If you're going to have a movie where there's just a bunch of talking, the talking better be freaking amazing. And all the script is freaking amazing.
It is. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, that's probably one of my all-time favorite HBO miniseries that they have put out. It's super good. Really, really good. And what's neat, too, is that it doesn't actually focus hardly at all on George Washington. It's mostly on, as the title would suggest, John Adams.
Yeah, but it follows a book that I was looking up on Amazon. It's just called John Adams. But
I've read the book too.
have you?
I have. It's a good book. It's a good read.
Fantastic. I got it on my Kindle.
Very
So
nice.
hopefully my attention will be focused enough that I can actually read it. I don't know what it is. I love to read, but my attention says no. And so after about 15 minutes, I want to do something else. I got to put this down.
You start reading the first sentence, you're like, oh, look, there's a doggy.
Squirrel.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyhow.
So other than celebrating our freedom here in America, what have you been up to this week?
Well, I started finishing up some shows that I had been watching, as you might have remembered from a couple episodes ago.
Did you finish 24?
No, I didn't finish 24. I still have a way to go. I haven't started the, I think, 6th season yet.
All right.
But I finished The Punisher.
Oh, the most recent season, I wager.
Recent season. The end was good, except like the very, very last part was kind of stupid. But again, the whole second season doesn't even hold a candle to the first season. So I don't know if they were just doing it for a tribute to Stan Lee, or they just decided to.
Well, it's probably the first season was so good they got the green light for the second season.
Well, yeah, but
now it sounds like they might have the yellow light for the third season.
well, I would hope so, because they could have. Well, I've said it many times. They could have done the entire season with like 5 episodes, but
Yeah.
they decided to dole it out like crazy from point A to point Z. Anyhow, so I finished that one. That was, like I said, it's okay. And then I finally finished Black Sails,
Ah, yes.
which that's it ended okay. There are a lot of, just like I was talking about with John Adams. If you're gonna have a lot of talking, the talking better be good. But you would think with Black Sails there would be a lot more swashbuckling,
A lot more sails that are black.
yes, action, and then there's just a bunch of talking that doesn't, like, okay, you guys do something else. You're a pirate show. Why is this all drama and like, just whatever?
I'm surprised that you didn't like it. I have not seen the show myself, but the promotional trailers that I did see for the show, it looks interesting. It looked like it had potential, and especially considering the fact that I personally really love the Pirates of the Caribbean movies from the most part. I think there's like one in there I'm like, eh. But for the most part, I really loved what they did in terms of creating that pirate world. And this looked to be more of a serious version of Pirates of the Caribbean, like perhaps more of like a rated R version of Pirates of the Caribbean. How close am I, Steve?
Well, not really anything to do with Pirates of the Caribbean. at all. Yeah, no. But anyhow, it's basically like it sets up what Treasure Island would be.
Ah, yes.
So, but there's just so much talking. It's like they make much ado about nothing, really.
Yep.
So at the end, you feel kind of unsettled. I don't know. Anyway, it wasn't. I'm not saying it's terrible. It's just that I wanted more, especially after the 4th season where everything started to pick up. I thought, okay, they're going to end with a kabang, and then just kind of ended with like a. So whatever. Anyway. So I kept on watching Longmire, and I thought I was on the last season, but I'm not.
Well, is that a good thing?
It is a good thing. I thought I was about finished up. I thought I was on season 4. No, I'm sorry. I thought I was on season 5, and season 5 was the last season. I'm actually on season 4, and there's 6 seasons. I'm not even close to finishing that one.
Interesting.
But I did finish Spider-Man.
Congratulations to you, good sir.
On the PS4. And I finished the first DLC.
Were you satisfied?
Yes, I was, of course.
I love that story.
It is good. It is very, very good. I would hope they would. I found a few bugs in it though, Russ.
One of my favorite scenes ever. I'll just look at you and say, "You knew? Mm-hmm. You knew?" Mm-hmm. Love that. That right there is a memorable moment.
Yeah.
Good storytelling.
The story is absolutely fantastic. I really can't wait to get the rest of the DLC for the game. The game is very well done. It just seems like there's some parts of it where they overlooked a couple things. I thought, I didn't know how they could overlook it, but but anyhow, I guess nothing is perfect in this world.
No. But that was one of my favorite movies. It was almost like a movie.
Well,
it was one of my favorite games of last year. Man, that was good. Gosh, that was so good. A lot of good games on the PS4 last year. Oof. And this year even too. I mean, at least during the first part of the year. You know.
What have you been up to, Russ?
What have I been up to? Well, I will tell you, Steve. I've been playing Alien Isolation on the Xbox. It's a game that got away from me. I started to play it, and then I had all these other games come through, and I was just like, okay, how on earth am I going to be able to play this and get back into the swing of things? And now that I have all this extra time, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to dive back in. And as a result, I've been really enjoying it. I finally got first contact with the Xenomorph, and it was pretty terrifying. I got to say, I really want you to come over and sit down and just watch me play, because this game is very similar to Resident Evil 2 in terms of me enjoying watching you play, and then you go, ah, you get freaked out and stuff. This game has its own version of that. So you never know when or where the Xenomorph is going to come out, and it's basically invincible. You can't kill it. So you have to try and outsmart it and hide from it. It's very much a human in touch with your mortality kind of scenario. But that's what's really cool is
paper cut. Darn it.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, that hurts.
But it's really, really cool. And I've actually kind of gotten into this Aliens mode. So I watched the movie Aliens, which was the James Cameron film.
I have yet to watch Aliens, by the way. It's on my Netflix.
What?
It's on my Netflix queue.
Okay, don't even worry about Netflix. Schmetflix. I have it purchased and ready to watch on my Xbox account. So you just plump that little booty on the couch there.
Are we going to be able to turn it up loud?
We can probably figure it out.
You know, we could turn it up to right below average. Yeah.
We'll have to, we will be strategic about it and make sure that my little one is like not sleeping or something. But I do think it is going to be a lot of fun to watch. I thought you had seen it all these years.
I've seen parts of it. I played the arcade.
All right. Well, we got to definitely show you that. And then I also watched Prometheus again, just because I had already owned that movie as well. So it's been fun to kind of dive back into the world of aliens. And you will not believe it, Steve. I actually, they had a sale on Xbox, various movies. I think I told you before how that's how I ended up watching The Girl Next Door. It was like 99 cents.
Yeah.
I watched Batman v Superman. And so I'm here to tell you, there are aspects to it that I thought were okay, and there are aspects to it that were just not good at all.
Not nearly okay.
Yeah, and it was basically what I thought it would be, where I do not like Ben Affleck as Batman. I like him as an actor. I don't think he fits the role of Bruce Wayne well. However, Henry Cavill as Superman is awesome. It is fantastic to watch Henry Cavill do his thing. It's also really fun to see Gal Gadot, because she's in the film as well, and she's not really in it very much, but having her there, obviously it's really, really cool seeing more scenes of her as Wonder Woman in the film. And you can tell that through the movie there are certain sequences that allude to the Justice League movie, which I can appreciate. It's like, okay, cool. You can see they're trying to start to introduce some of these different things by hinting here and there, that sort of thing. And just overall though, it wasn't like Man of Steel. Man of Steel was such a great movie. But I'm here to be fair and say that it wasn't a complete train wreck like I thought it would be. I think that it's better than that. I will go so far as to say it is. If you're looking to get some kind of exposure to these actors, these superheroes and stuff, then it's worth a watch just to see it. But having said that, it's not like, oh, I can't wait to go see that again. It is what it is, and I just miss Christopher Nolan and Christian Bale. That's all I gotta say. So
at that point, I would have taken Batman Forever, Val Kilmer.
Val Kilmer.
They put Val Kilmer back in there.
Hey, Val Kilmer wasn't that bad.
He wasn't.
I will say he made a fine substitute to Michael Keaton. Which, how on earth do you ever follow up Michael Keaton's performance as Batman? You just can't. But Val Kilmer, I thought, did a pretty decent job. Now, George Clooney, on the other hand, not so much.
Fail.
That was, and I will say, Batman and Robin with George Clooney is still worse than Batman v Superman, just simply because there are things about it that I thought were cool. It's just there are just certain decisions that were made. I'm like, no, it doesn't work.
Russ, you need to chill. Chill. That's all I'm going to say it 26 more times.
Good night. You know, the other thing that was interesting about the movie too is that Jesse Eisenberg played Lex Luthor. And I like Jesse as an actor as well. I thought he did pretty well. He had kind of a younger take on Lex Luthor. But I will say that Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor from the Christopher Reeve Superman was just absolutely classic. Yeah. I also thought that Kevin Spacey's take on Lex Luthor was really good too. I really liked him in Superman Returns. So this one was a bit of a departure, but I did like the amount of aggression and more of like the schizophrenic, insane kind of undertones that he was portraying with this. In a way, you know, for some reason I found myself thinking I found myself thinking about how he would actually make a really good Riddler in the Batman world.
He would. I would say so.
And I thought I would share the little token. Other than that, though, I played Sea of Thieves with you during our Twitch-ing.
And a fish-ing.
Yeah, you know what? That fishing mechanic is so fun. I really enjoyed that a lot. And especially, I've said this before, I really do like having other people to fish with. Because in Red Dead Redemption 2, I thoroughly enjoyed just being able to go anywhere in the map, find a lake or a pond or river or stream, whatever, and throw a line in and go fishing. That was fun unto itself. But where I think the Sea of Thieves model actually takes a little more of a different turn is that whole notion that like you and I could just hang out on our boat and just do some fishing, or if we're on an island and we're grabbing some treasure or we're like fighting something or whatever it is, it's just nice to be able to take a break and be like, hey, you want to go fish?
I got some crabs.
And the fish are really fun to look at too. Like if you capture a new one and you look at it and you're thinking, man, that one looks way different than these other ones over here. I don't know. It's just, it makes the game a more deeper, enjoyable experience.
At least for a few days until a few more months go by and then they do whatever they're going to do next.
Yeah. Well, without further ado, let's get into some gaming news. What do you say, Steve?
Let's do it. It's been a while.
It has been a little bit of a while, hasn't it? Well, what I can say is we have this one story in particular that involves Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony as a contest the Trump administration trade tariffs. So recently, all three of these companies petitioned the U.S. government to reconsider their stance on tariffs placed on goods imported from China to the U.S. The tariff is being proposed by the Trump administration as part of the wider economic standoff between the United States and China, and would include a 25% increase on video game consoles, controllers, arcade machines, and even board games. The trio of consoles manufacturers explained in their letter that, quote, while we appreciate the administration's efforts to protect U.S. intellectual property and preserve U.S. high-tech leadership, the disproportionate harm caused by these tariffs to U.S. consumers and businesses will undermine, not advance, these goals, end quote. The companies claim that the increased tariffs would not only mean higher costs for their audiences, but that the increase could potentially affect themselves, but of the 65,000 odd game developers in the United States as well. Another quote I have here, it says, reduced video game console sales unquestionably will lead to reduced sales of games, which is highly likely to have a deleterious effect on the small and medium-sized businesses that make these games and on the workers whom they employ, end quote. So it's a new kind of turn of events when it comes to this ongoing tariff thing. I'm not exactly sure how I feel about the whole entire thing, but I just feel as though it is worth talking about, and it's difficult to know for sure, you know, how to make your stance on it, because obviously you have these manufacturers, these companies that are international, that you don't really have them solely based here in the States. And obviously Nintendo's main HQ's in Japan, that sort of thing. And so I think at the end of the day, my initial knee-jerk reaction to it is that obviously China is kind of the epicenter of where different products are manufactured, where they're created because of cheap labor. And since we're looking at this tariff situation, it almost makes me wonder if it's worth exploring actually taking some of those manufacturing plants and bringing them either stateside or to another country altogether. And that way you'd be able to alleviate the whole tariff situation overall, I guess you could say. But I really do think that it's worth looking into, because while it would be a bit of a pain in terms of like your infrastructure, your pipeline and stuff, obviously you'd have to make changes, and that would be kind of almost a growing pain-esque situation for these different companies. I do see that as a possible solution. But what do you think, Steve?
Well, I'm looking at it from more of a businessy standpoint. I think a lot of these companies always look for excuses to increase their bottom dollar. And even though there's going to be tariffs, or most likely tariffs, I think regardless, a lot of these companies are going to see it as, okay, well, this is partly why we have to increase the price to XYZ. And that's been the excuse, like almost year over year over year. I remember when we had like the fuel crisis, and I was doing car stereo at the time. All the companies said, oh, we have to increase our prices by $50 to $100 to compensate for all the extra fuel costs. And we thought, okay, well, yeah, that kind of sucks because fuel's expensive. I mean, if you deliver maybe one subwoofer, okay, I get it, yeah. But I mean, if you buy 100 of them, it's still one shipment. And then after the fuel costs went back down to normal, they still kept their prices up, and we're looking for another excuse to then raise their prices again. Granted, that's one industry, but you can look at it across the board. I mean, Apple has a lot of their phones made in, Foxconn in China, and their prices are astronomical right now for their phones. And when you have other high competition like Samsung with the Androids, that's keeping their prices pretty much the same for every generation of phone, Apple's going to have a hard time selling the brand new product for another $1,200 to $1,300 plus the tariff. I don't know. I mean, I think the average consumer is looking to save costs where they can, and the average company is looking to raise costs where they can.
Yeah.
So at some point, there has to be some happy medium.
It's very insightful from Mr. Stevie Weeby over here.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, segueing into movie news, Superman's Henry Cavill cast as Sherlock Holmes in new movie.
Interesting.
The Hollywood Reporter said that Cavill joins Stranger Things' Millie Bobby Brown, who is starring as Enola Holmes, and Helena make sure I can say this correctly. Helena Bonham Carter as Enola's mother in the film based on the Enola Holmes Mysteries book series by Nancy Springer. I, for one, am looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a nice addition and opportunity for Mr. Cavill to be able to...
The Capster?
Yeah, be able to spread his wings. I really liked him in the Mission Impossible movie.
Yeah, it was good.
Opposite of Tom Cruise, I thought he played a really good villain, and it was really cool to see someone like him who obviously got into the main spotlight with Superman. And Superman, of course, being the Boy Scout that he is, it was nice to see him switch up things with that. Also, too, the fact that we were reporting a while back about how he is going to play Geralt of Rivia for the Witcher series.
Right.
And I'm looking forward to that too. Like, I'm glad to see that he's really taking kind of these creative risks with these different characters.
Did you see what I posted on Facebook, by the way, with Cavill posting some new pictures of himself?
I did. Yeah, that looks really good. I'm telling you, I've got a good feeling about it.
Although he's wearing one sword instead of two. So I wonder if that has something to do with the story, perhaps.
Well, and it could be a big payoff. Like perhaps when he gets the second sword, then it's like, whoa, look at that. It gets all the fans all crazy.
That's what I'm saying. I hope that at some point they give him the second sword and it's story based, not like, one sword's sharp enough, it takes care of both. Nah.
I'm sure they will not overlook that little detail.
Hopefully.
The Matrix 4 rumor. The Wachowskis returning to direct new movie. So back in 2017, The Hollywood Reporter originally reported that Warner Brothers was starting to develop a relaunch of the Matrix franchise starring Jordan, who's the Michael P. Jordan, with a script by Zach Penn, who is the co-screenwriter of Ready Player One. At the time, the involvement of the Wachowskis was undecided, but one new rumor from the GWW says that the Wachowskis will return to direct the fourth film, which will shoot in Chicago under the working title Project Ice Cream.
Chicago.
I am wondering, though, how it's going to do. The Matrix, to me, is synonymous with Keanu Reeves. It's very difficult for me to see any other actor take on like kind of a main character role with that. And plus, I feel like the Matrix trilogy was a pop culture staple of that time period where, like, if you recall, like the first Matrix, I think came out around 1999. And then the next one came out in 2001. And then the third one came out in 2003, right around there. And it was like right in that time period where you had a major technological shift with all things like computers and
cameras,
hacking and the internet going to cable. And there was just a lot there that I think that they were able to capitalize on. And I think it hit kind of a pop culture nervous system that everybody could just clam onto and be like, oh man, this is really cool. And I don't know. That's my take on it. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I think The Matrix was done once and done right, and it makes me nervous to have them continue it on, especially right now. Hollywood's looking to revamp a lot of these classics to make some more money, and that's not always the great decision.
Now, there are a couple other details here. One that says they say that the same art director from the original Matrix movie, Hugh Baidup, has already been brought on as the production designer of this new project. The site also says that the, quote, plot details are under wraps, and it is currently unknown whether the film will still be a reboot or will be a sequel to the previous trilogy, end quote. So you just have no idea. Now, another interesting story that came across my proverbial desk is that Paul Rudd, of Ant-Man fame, is set to join Ghostbusters 2020 cast.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Reported by Variety, Rudd will allegedly play a teacher in the film. Quote, I've been wanting to work with Paul Rudd since my short film opened for the wet, hot American summer of Sundance, or at Sundance, I should say, end quote, said Reitman. I'm thrilled he'll be joining this new chapter in the original Ghostbusters universe, end quote. Sigourney Weaver claims that she will reprise her role as Diana Barrett alongside former co-stars Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd. Earlier this year, Reitman said that the sequel would, quote, hand the movie back to the fans, end quote. As well it should, in my opinion.
I'm hoping so.
But I feel like Paul Rudd actually is a nice addition to the Ghostbusters stable. I could totally see him in that world.
Yeah, I can too. I think it's going to be good.
And finally, the Batman movie has Andy Serkis rumored for an unspecified role. Batman on Film reports the rumor detailed that Serkis has been cast in an unspecified non-motion capture role. That means we'll actually be seeing Serkis' physical face and form in the movie as opposed to what he normally does, which is all the motion capture stuff, because he tends to do those more like creature character roles.
Except in Black Panther, he was pretty much all there except for his arm.
True. Very true. In the movie, which potentially rules out some of Batman's more monster-like foes that would likely be rendered in CGI, such as Clayface. The report also detailed rumors that suggest the Batman, that's what the movie is going to be called, I guess, is The Batman, is looking to cast an actor between the ages of 20 and 40 to play the Penguin, while Serkis is aged 55 and thus outside of that age range. He does seem a sensible choice for the role. And once again, just like I said with Paul Rudd, I think that having Andy Serkis in the Batman world, especially as a villain, would be fantastic. I would love that. And honestly, I can think of him in quite a few different roles. The sky's the limit with that because that is one talented man. What do you think, Steve?
I would like to see Andy Serkis in pretty much whatever, but I can't see him in Batman, but the door's open. I'm looking forward to it. What the future holds.
What the future holds. Now, finally, this one was a big story too. and I want to get your take on this, Steve, but Johnny Ive to depart Apple and start his own agency is what we're talking about in technology news.
The story came down to Apple not being as magnificent as the Genesis it began. The vocabulary of the Apple brand has evolved into something not as fantastic as...
Can you just come over and read me bedtime stories? I could use that.
Can you talk any slower, Johnny?
He's the one guy who could talk slowly, and you're just like hung on each and every word. You're like,
Yeah, tell me more. This toilet paper is made from the finest silks from Egypt.
He should read the dictionary.
he really
And
should.
all the definitions for every word.
And the encyclopedia.
Yeah. Like, man, I'm learning so much from Johnny Ive right
It's
now.
like another news. Children from across the world are completely acing their English classes as they listen to Johnny Ive. Anyway, we should probably go on to the story here. The creator of the iPod, the iPhone, the iMac, the iPad, and Apple Watch is departing Apple and creating his own design firm, which will be called Love From. He's been with Apple since 1996, which, if you recall, that's kind of like toward the end of when they had the Tutti Frutti looking Apple monitors with all the different colors and bubbly kind of designs and stuff. He came on in 1996 and was basically kind of the right-hand man of Steve Jobs. They worked really closely together, and he was the one who was instrumental in all the designs that we've been seeing since 1997 when they first introduced the iPhone onward. Well, of course, they had the iPod, that sort of thing as well, but he also had a hand in designing the Apple Store. When you walk into any of those Apple stores and you see how it's laid out, and the spaceship headquarters that Apple finally finished building. That's in Cupertino, California.
So he's got some money.
I would think so. I mean, I honestly, I've heard something about how he lives in the UK. I don't know. I imagine he probably has property here in the United States as well as over in the UK. But man, that is big news. It's super big because it's, on the one hand, Apple was very quick to talk about how they're going to continue working with Johnny Ive through his design agency. So there still will be some sort of connection there. Like they'll still be able to work on products and stuff. But it's interesting to me to see him do that. And I do think, on the one hand, it is a bit of like a career evolutionary step for someone like him, because obviously he's had such a massive impact internationally with all the products he's designed. And now that he's able to strike out on his own and have his own design firm, he gets to be his own boss, and he gets to perhaps take on some other clients and challenges that he wasn't able to do under Apple. But I'm wondering how Apple is going to fare over the next 5 to 10 years. Now, obviously, they've been able to garner a lot of talent, a lot of really great thinkers out there, and engineers and developers and designers. But it's going to be interesting to see who ends up being the next Johnny Ive for the company, because that, I mean, if you think about it, 1996 to 2019, that's a really big spread of time.
Well, I think Apple's got a lot of bright minds. I think they can keep the sexy back still.
Keep the sexy. Well, and if you think about it too, Tim Cook, before he became CEO, I believe he was the chief operations officer. What's interesting about that is a COO.
Not sexy.
Well, they're more of like a distributor pipeline minded person.
Right.
Whereas
Russ.
Steve Jobs was more of the visionary. He was more of like the
Right,
glorified
Russ.
salesman.
Yeah.
Knew the persona of Apple. And we've been seeing over the last, like, I'd say 5 years, a subtle shift in terms of like what Apple's doing, where I would say the Apple Watch was probably the most recent new invention that they came up with, outside of like the Apple Pod and that sort of thing. But it makes me wonder, what other types of inventions are they going to come up with, or are they going to stick to what they've already got going on and just continue to streamline the production pipelines.
One can only hope, Russ. They need to do something. It's been pretty lackluster for the last 3 years.
Agreed. Well, grab your web shooters and head on over to Europe. It's time for the topic of the day.
It's more like
That's true. That's true. That was really good.
Thanks, Russ.
You're welcome,
I've been
Steve.
practicing.
You playing that PS4 game. He's unnatural, this kid.
It's almost like me waking up in my skivvies going, yeah, I'm Spider-Man.
Hey, look, it's a bald Peter Parker.
Man, hey, now that'd be something.
Who needs a mask? I'll
That'd
just
be
use
something.
face paint.
Yeah. And by the end of my excursion, I'll be sweating all the paint off.
Okay. Why does Spider-Man look like he's melting?
Beating up baddies makes you hot.
You do the whole like UFC thing where like when you're grappling with a bad guy, you just intentionally like smear all your sweat and face paint in the guy's other face. Get off me.
I know how Spider-Man tastes. I got a sweat in my mouth. Gross.
Our topic of the day is our Spider-Man Far From Home movie review. And so we're going to start off with spoiler-free high-level thoughts before we get into the spoiler elevator and dive down into the spoiler portion of the review. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, Steve. What did you think of the film?
Well, this was not quite the home run knock out of the park as Spider-Man Homecoming was. That's not to say that it was bad, Russ. That's just saying I didn't enjoy it as much. But, I like how they're not doing the world's gonna end stuff with Spider-Man. I like how, it's the enemies that are definitely a threat and villainous, but it's not, protect the galaxy sort of thing with Spider-Man. And it shouldn't be, but after all these big epic Marvel movies with Endgame and Thor and Captain America, whatnot, it's nice to have a neighborhood Spider-Man film.
Agreed.
That being said, though, I didn't think it was as funny. And it might have been because we watched it like at midnight, pretty much. But
It was 11 o'clock, okay.
Okay, 11:05. Anyway. I don't know whose idea was it to start at 11:05, but anyway. So, I don't know. I didn't find it as funny. Maybe you did. I mean, it wasn't like not funny, but it wasn't as funny as Homecoming. So, maybe it wasn't as scripted as well or as rich as it could have been. That being said, Jake Gyllenhaal's the man. Did you know I read he was trying to be the part of Spider-Man, not to replace Tom Holland, but right around the Garfield time.
Yes, I heard about that.
That could have been awesome.
That had potential.
So anyhow, it's weird how you could have been Spider-Man, but now he's in a Spider-Man film, but he's not Spider-Man. He's a Spider-Man villain. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, he did great. I thought he was awesome. And it's funny because, as you know, I did not read Spider-Man. I flipped through it every once in a while. But the way Mysterio was portrayed in the movie is kind of how I saw him in the comic.
Oh, really?
From little that I flipped through. Yeah. So I thought he was displayed very well. I didn't have a clue about the origin of where this character came from. So I didn't know anything walking into this.
Yeah.
But I thought he was displayed very well. I thought the action, so-so. It seemed more like, here's the thing, it seemed more like a high school love story that happened to be Spider-Man more than Spider-Man, and then he had a love interest. Mm-hmm. Kind of seemed that way to me. So, yeah, it was good. It just wasn't as good as I wanted it to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say it was a fun movie. I definitely liked Homecoming more. I thought that Spider-Man Homecoming really hit the nail on the head in terms of a Spider-Man movie that was for me that I really liked. I did enjoy more of the romantical progression that they had in this film. I thought that it was very tender and innocent and cute in terms of the high school romances that we all know and love. I thought that, like you said, Jake did a great job as Mysterio. I think there are certain things, and we'll get into later during the spoiler version of this review, but there were certain things that I thought were just dynamite. And there are other aspects to it where I found myself kind of getting a little bored, honestly.
Right. Yeah.
Which is saying something because Spider-Man's one of my favorite characters, and I'm really into the movies that they have done so far and that sort of thing. So, but I will say, if you're a Spider-Man fan and you want to see a progression from where Avengers Endgame left off, I would say you will have a good time with it. It's just, I don't know if you're going to be wanting to go see this film multiple times in the theater.
Right.
So, and with that, I say, come with me, Steve, into the spoiler elevator. Hey, if you look out the window, it looks like there's lots of bottle rockets and fireworks going off.
However, it's it's odd because we're kind of heading towards Italy.
Yes.
San Marco Square, the Bridge of Sighs.
Oh.
You know, I've been to Italy, Russ. You know, I've been to Italy.
I know you have. Do people sigh on the Bridge of Sighs?
A little bit, yes.
Is it kind of like a stress reliever?
No, because it's called the Bridge of Sighs, and I learned this because back in the day, the prisoners went from the courthouse to the execution yard over that bridge, and so it was they sighed because it's like I'm gonna die, and that's why it's called the Bridge of Sighs.
And I think Mary Jane mentioned something like that, didn't she?
You know what? She may have. Yes, I think she did.
Wow. You learn something new every day. Very nice. Well, we are at the spoiler floor here, so we're going to jump right into the drill down of this film. If you have not seen it, we recommend you pause us, go see it, and then join us.
There's your warning.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, you don't care, then, hey, you know what? Just sit on down and listen to what we have to say. So, the plot. So, let's go into this little chestnut. I was glad to see that they, of course, continued where the Endgame left off as it applies to Tom Holland. I can't do it as...
Tom Holland?
Tom Holland. With his particular character and involvement with the Avengers, and just, again, I think it's always a brilliant move on Marvel's behalf where they have these standalone films that help to build up individual characters and then have these Avenger team up movies that bring them all back together again and shake up whatever kind of conflict's been going on with them together and see what kind of scientific formula comes out of it as a result of kick buttery. So,
well, the thing is that, yes, I know what you're saying, and I agree with it, but I have a different take, which is, by in part, I want a standalone Spider-Man movie that has nothing to do with what happened with the Avengers, where we had Spider-Man Homecoming that takes place right after, I think, what was it, second Avengers movie?
Age of Ultron.
Age of Ultron. So you have that one pick up where the Ultron left off, and then you have Stark obviously coming in there, and it's not a...
Mentor.
Yeah, Mentor. But it's not a standalone Spider-Man movie. Now you have this one, and it's still, you have Happy in there, and you have Nick Fury in there, and it's still where the Avengers movie let off again, and it's to blend the two together. But again, it's not a standalone Spider-Man film. For example, Iron Man, you had a couple standalone films. Thor, you had a couple of standalone films. Captain America, maybe not so much, but I'm looking for a Spider-Man movie that it has absolutely nothing to do with the whole entire Avengers theme. You know, like if there's going to be a third Spider-Man movie, which there most likely will be, are we still going to have to talk to other members of the Avengers, or can it just be Spider-Man and Spider-Man alone doing his Spider-Man stuff? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
I think that they're in a phase now where enough Marvel films have come out that they are being funneled into this kind of ecosystem that we've talked about many times in the past, where you, on the one hand, have more of a standalone film of a character, but at the same time, they exist with all of these other characters in the same world and universe. And so while they have more minor roles, they still do have some sort of, I don't know, contribution to the standalone films themselves. That actually doesn't really bother me so much because I like the notion that there's this symbiotic relationship with all the different characters, and having cameos or having characters play minor roles in films that are focusing on a particular character. I think that that's actually great. In fact, we talked about that with Shazam. Say it for me correctly, Steve.
Shazam!
Thank you. And if you recall, having those little nods of the DC universe in there really made it feel cohesive. And I think that's the same type of situation with this Marvel film. But it was interesting. I thought it was fun to have this take place in Europe, because that's kind of like the mandatory big high school field trip that a lot of folks take around that age group, is like,
Really?
we got to go over to, Italy or Spain or the UK or something, and
I never went during high school.
what did you go during the JC, Steve?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's the college trip. You don't take it in high school.
Well, some kids do. It depends on what class you're in. I've heard that if you take French, sometimes if the school is feeling saucy, they take the class out to France for a week. I don't know. Of course,
Okay.
given the state of affairs with our school system, you're lucky if you go to a French restaurant in the local town, but that's another episode entirely. Anyway, so when it comes to the different takes, what did you like the idea of leaving New York and going into Europe?
Yeah, I thought it was nice to get a break from New York, because everything happens in New York. Yeah, it's like the rest of the nation doesn't exist.
It's the Big
You know what I'm
Apple.
saying? Hey, it's a Big Apple. It's Manhattan.
It doesn't sleep.
It's just in another world.
Literally, it doesn't sleep. How can it sleep? It's got like all kinds of mayhem going on, destruction and chaos.
You got Ghostbusters.
I'm just trying to eat a pie over here.
You got a Marvel, the MCU, whatever it is. You got.
I mean, look at that tower. That's the one tower that doesn't get destroyed by all these things and monsters coming out of nowhere.
You got the Sopranos. Oh wait, hold on. Well, you still do.
It doesn't matter. You got the Ghostbusters down here.
Yeah,
you got the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles underneath us, and then you got the Tony Stark stank, whatever his name is. You got the big Avengers Tower. It's insanity over here.
This next Marvel film is going to be held in Idaho. Anyway.
But yeah, I thought that.
Shout out to Idaho, by the way.
What? Hi, Idaho. If Idaho, you the pimp. Woo!
Man.
So when it comes to the locale, and especially when it comes to this type of setup, obviously Peter Parker is missing his mentor, who's Tony Stark, and there is this introduction to Mysterio. And it was really cool. I liked the idea that, and this is what threw me off, because I read Spider-Man comics, but like the whole like him playing nice with Peter Parker, I'm like, this is not how I remember Mysterio in the comics. Like, what is the deal? And so it was nice to see, oh, he's playing off of Peter Parker's gullibility. And I actually liked how they tied in his character to the previous Iron Man films, where he used to work for Tony Stark and that sort of thing. I thought that was super cool. I don't know how accurate that is to the comic books, but I bought it. I thought, oh yeah, this is really, really cool. And I like how there are in just about every Iron Man film, they showcase these different really brilliant people who work in tech, who are either competitors of Tony Stark, or maybe they idolize Tony, or they wanted to work with Tony, but due to different circumstances, whether it was Tony's ego or it was Tony's just being more gifted or whatever, it's almost like a byproduct of creating these lesser known villains in a way. But basically, I mean, this one took a bunch of ex-employees who were kind of butthurt over the way they were treated by Tony Stark and tried to manifest this kind of charade of sorts. But I've got to say that one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie was when Spider-Man faced off against Mysterio, and we got to see the illusions take its hold on Peter Parker, because that
is exactly what I loved about seeing Mysterio in the comics, because Mysterio was all about those illusions. He was all about just really messing with your head. And I, for one, really loved how they portrayed that in this film. And there was this new sense of danger with Spider-Man, because he can't figure out what's real and what's not, and that's a real disadvantage. And I loved how they tied it back into one of the core concepts of Spider-Man, which is his spider sense, and brought that to the forefront in terms of how valuable that ability is.
What did you think, Steve?
Yeah, yes, I'm glad they finally did more of the spider sense, because we haven't seen it really at all. Exception with the when his hair on his arm raised, and
that was really cool.
Right. So beyond that, we haven't really seen it. So yeah, I'm glad they started talking about it. And the illusions, yeah, that was so. I don't know. It was okay. I think they should have fleshed out how he was doing it a bit more, because it seemed like, yeah, there was drones with projectors and weapons, and that's how they were able to cause the destruction per se and do whatever. But I think it was kind of a far stretch. It all seemed like it was Stark drones that were doing it. But later on, once we saw that Peter had given Edith to Mysterio, it all ended up being Stark drones anyway. So what was it before? Like, they didn't really hash that out. I mean, yeah, there were still projections. There were still, whatever. But I don't know. I kind of wanted to see a bit more of how he was doing what he was doing. And I didn't really want, I don't know, maybe I didn't want the villain to die either again. So anyhow, let's just talk about the projections a bit, because did you think they were a bit generic?
I did. Yes. While I was watching it and seeing the elementals on there, I was thinking, this is just not, and I don't know if this is intentional by the filmmakers or not, because it could very well have been their intentions all along to have these, like the idea of these elementals and stuff to just kind of be generic, where like it just, something wasn't stirring the Kool-Aid when you're watching, you're like, what is this? And have it directly correlate into the idea that you have this group of people who are trying to come up with some kind of villain or need or whatever. And that way it'll like validate their existence. They can make tons of money and have fame and all that kind of stuff. So I tend to want to believe that it was intentional. Having said that though, they were very like, just, I was kind of like, what? And actually when I saw the teaser trailers for this film, at first I thought it was Sandman.
That's what I thought.
And I was really excited because I was thinking, oh, this is cool. Sandman's one of my favorite Spider-Man villains. But it wasn't. It was this other thing entirely. So,
but then I thought the way that these villains looked like the Sandman before. And so they didn't look like anything new. And then I thought also that the CGI was so great with the last few films that we've seen from Marvel that kind of held the bar pretty high.
Yeah.
And so then we see this and then they dropped the bar a little bit. So I don't know. I don't know if it was like you said, I don't know if it was supposed to be that way or it was an intentional for it to be that way. But either way, I'm kind of so.
I do go back and forth with their approach to this whole idea of how like Tony Stark has this tech that if it goes into the wrong hands, then there's problems for it. And we've kind of seen this in the past with other Iron Man films where, like for instance, what was it? Hammer Industries, I think it was. It was the that guy?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
What's the actor's name?
I forgot.
Oh my gosh, I love him. I love him so much I can't remember his name. But anyway, Sam Rockwell. He was fabulous in that role of Iron Man 2. But the idea was obviously he stole some of Tony Stark's tech and they were doing stuff with it, and that was a bit of a problem. And same with even the first Iron Man when you had, what is his name? It's the dude from The Big Lebowski. Oh my gosh, my brain is just not cooperating at all. I want to say it's like Jeff
Bridges.
Thank you. We finish each other's sentences. But being able to see him also like steal the tech, there's a kind of this ongoing theme that's occurring. And I will be the first to tell you that I don't remember all of Mysterio's origin story. So I can't say with authority what exactly is true to the comic book versus what is more creative license in this case. I want to say, though, that Mysterio had a bit more of his abilities that didn't have to rely on other people or drones or that sort of thing. Like he had kind of more of a fantastical element to him. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Well, since I've been playing the Spider-Man game, there's a bit of that's not Mysterio that happens in the game.
Right.
And so me alone, I just went through that with the game. So to me, it didn't feel that as fresh as it probably would have if I had been like you and already completed the game. And so I thought, hey, okay, I just was through this and it feels kind of leftover. But that's not necessarily a criticism of the movie. That's just with me because I played the game late. But
well, and it makes me wonder, too, if the filmmakers wanted to try and ground this character a bit more in reality. And so that's why they took the whole notion of, well, he has this crack team of visual effects artists, essentially. And that suit he was wearing, that was a motion capture suit. That's actually like a legit motion capture suit that Hollywood uses in films. So it was that's why it's making me wonder if they intentionally took on more of this accessible, realistic role of, how would Mysterio exist in our world? Well, I mean, he'd be this guy who's really tech savvy and he'd have his team of visual effects artists and then they could hack into the network of drones that Tony has in the satellite. And really, like I said, I need to do some more research on Mysterio, but I don't think that's how he is. I think he actually has some things that are a bit more of the fantastical realm. We'll just have to see. But I did think that for what it was interesting.
actually, it doesn't matter anymore because he's dead.
At least we're led to believe he's dead.
True.
That's another thing, too. I really did love that end sequence when Spider-Man's coming up to Mysterio and he had one last illusion up his sleeve where that really wasn't him and that Mysterio was actually next to him with a gun and tried to shoot him. I mean, that was pretty intense.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that because that made the situation that much more deadly and realistic is just that notion. Plus also Jake's performance, I think, led to having more of a gravity to the movie, which I really liked. It wasn't just like, oh, it's this comic book movie. Like it was actually more of a danger, I guess you could say, like a sense of danger with his performance in there. The one, if I had to critique his performance overall, though, I did not like that speech that he gave in the bar. I really did feel that was unnecessary and it was too over the top. It was too forced. What did you think about that?
Yeah, maybe not unnecessary, but they had to, I think, show his bad side. There had to be a turning point where he was the good guy and everybody's best buddy to the villain, the main antagonist of the film.
Yeah. And
that was the reversal that they needed. So it might have been over the top, but it all made us hate him right then and there. It was that little stick the knife in and turn it once that I think the audience needed to change their opinion.
I just wish that there was a different approach to that scene entirely. I think it went on for too long. And like I said, I think it was too over the top. It would have been nice to, I don't know, just kind of go back to a whiteboarding session and be like, okay, let's try and ideate on this a bit further. But what did you think of the cast overall? Obviously, we have some returning faces.
Yeah. So the cast was fine. I thought that, I mean, it's nothing really new. Yeah, we have Gyllenhaal, but I don't know. When I think of the cast, I think of how their lines were written. Mm-hmm. And to me, like with Nick Fury, nothing made sense to him until I got to the post-credit scene, and then everything made sense.
Right.
But if I was someone who did not make it to the post-credit scene, like, I'm just going to go, it's Sony, it's not, whoever, it's not strictly Marvel, so I don't really care, then I would have left the movie thinking that I didn't care for Nick Fury anymore, and I didn't care for, some of the other folks. I did think that the cast for this UK, this Italian, European Avengers behind the scenes folks, that was kind of unneeded. It was like, okay, this is the guy in Prague. He's like KGB kind of, so he has to be kind of dark and menacing and kind of in your face a little bit. And same with the other girl. She's, whoever that was in Germany, she has to be more rough. I'm like, no, that doesn't really work. I don't think so. I don't think they would be treating Peter Parker that way. I mean, right after Endgame, now they're kind of muscling him around a little bit. No, I don't think that would happen. So I don't know if they were miscast or if it was, again, the script, but I didn't feel that they were portrayed correctly.
I did really appreciate the huge adventure that the class ended up going on. I felt like the teachers were just perfect. The actors who played the teachers, just super funny to watch. And as they kept manipulating the trip that Peter Parker was on and how they were just completely gullible and be like, oh man, I guess we got tickets. Let's go here. I thought that was really funny. Also, the budding romance between Peter Parker's best buddy and this other girl in the class, I thought was great because here Peter is trying to woo Mary Jane and he's just unsuccessful in doing so. And then out of nowhere, his buddy has this great relationship. It's the whole when it rains, it pours kind of thing. I thought all those little side story things were pretty amusing. I didn't think they portrayed MJ the way I would have liked it. That's just me personally. I just don't care for her. I don't think she's really the actress is fine, and I've seen her in other stuff, and she's fine. But I just think that she's not charming the way I see MJ. Right.
And so I don't really see what Peter Parker is chasing after because his previous love interest was completely opposite of this love interest, and she just doesn't seem charming really at all.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that, where she's just too harsh.
Right.
Her character is too harsh, and that's just not who Mary Jane is. Like Mary Jane in the comics, and even the older films as well. I think the older films really nailed the classic persona of who Mary Jane is. And I think that's what fans really want. That's what resonates with fans. And when you think of Mary Jane, I mean, she is kind of one of those love interests in comics where she's kind of like the ultimate girlfriend.
Right.
Where she's vivacious, she's trusting, she holds Peter accountable.
She's bright.
Yeah. She has all these different things about it, but there's not a callousness that Mary Jane possesses. There's not this I'm going to use cut down humor because it's my defense mechanism kind of thing. She's that's just not who Mary Jane is. And so actually my favorite part of her performance was at the very end when he was swinging with her and she was screaming and squealing and stuff and hold on to her. And when she buried her face into the side of his mask, of the side of his head, that's Mary Jane.
Yeah. So
that's totally Mary Jane.
I'm wondering if with the third Spider-Man movie, if they're going to bring more of that essence of what we want out of Mary Jane out, maybe she just needs the right guy. But I don't know. Again, with her trying to figure out who Peter Parker is, if he's Spider-Man or not, and then he has that line of, "Are you just interested in me because you were thinking I was Spider-Man?" And then she didn't really have a very good comeback to it, and they didn't flesh it out really as much as they should have. If I was Peter Parker, I'd be like, "Yeah, no, you killed it,"
Well, and that's a good example too of the Mary Jane that we all know and love. See, the Mary Jane from the comic books, she exudes honesty to the point where that's where the accountability part comes into play too, is that she's such this pure woman that, I mean, not pure like Sister Mary pure, but pure, but just in the sense where she's 100% transparent, and she expects Peter to be transparent with her, and she tries to help Peter in different ways that she can. But ultimately it's just this, it's something that it kind of, there's a recipe there for a little relationship conflict, because Peter has to be careful with his identity and what he does, and he doesn't want to get Mary Jane placed into harm's way. But at the same time, Mary Jane has this expectation of, hey, we're in this together. You need to be upfront and honest with me and that sort of thing. And there's a certain feminine qualities about the character's archetype that I think are missing. Although I will say she was closer to the Mary Jane archetype in this film than she was in Homecoming. In Homecoming, it was like, I mean, it was complete opposite of what I personally want to see in the character of Mary Jane.
Right. But speaking of the responsibility, shifting gears also, Russ. What? Clutch, gas, go. So I thought that'd be funny.
It is funny. I'm smiling.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, I cracked myself up, I guess. So Spider-Man Peter Parker giving away Edith, which is Tony Stark's multi-billion-dollar weapon system. It's the trinket that Stark,
almost a family heirloom,
a memento, gives only Peter Parker. He doesn't give it to Nick Fury. He doesn't give it to Captain America. He doesn't give it to...
Technically, he did give it to Nick Fury because Nick Fury gave it to Peter Parker's hand.
Well, yeah. Okay, I stand corrected.
You sit corrected.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, really. So... just a technicality. So as much as Peter Parker was investing in his time and his attention towards being an Avenger and getting Tony Stark's attention and, okay, you want this mantle, now you got it. And it's almost as if like you're 16 years old and then someone gave you a Ferrari LaFerrari and you're 16 years old, you got the poster on your wall in your room. And someone says, you know what? You're a good kid. I like you very much. Here's the keys. You don't owe anything on it. You don't owe insurance. You don't owe, you don't have to, all the gas and it's free. All the maintenance is free. All you got to do is just drive the car. Okay? Have a nice day. They turn around and walk away and you go, you know what? This is just too expensive. I don't want it. Anybody else want it? Hey, how you doing? I've only known you for a couple hours. You want the LaFerrari? I just don't see that happening at all whatsoever. I mean, part of Peter Parker is with great power comes great responsibility. He just like chucks it away. I thought, no, I can't. I don't buy it. I don't buy it one bit.
Oh, Peter Parker. Well, and that's one of his flaws. It's one of his strengths, and yet at the same time, one of his flaws is that he's just too trusting. And that's what makes Peter so likable. And at the same time, when he's in those situations, you as a viewer go, no, what are you doing? So it makes for interesting story.
I would just think like right after Endgame where
you would think that he would be a bit more cautious after Endgame.
Yeah, I mean that he turned to dust and went away and he knows that there's greater superpowers out there. You would think that maybe he would give it to Nick Fury, be like, hey, you know what, Nick? You're calling my cell phone too often. Here, just take this. Okay, here, take it. Let me just be a kid for once, And instead he gives it to Rando Jones X, who he's only known for a day. No, Russ.
What do you think of the visual effects of this movie, Steve?
I think we already touched on that.
We did touch on the elementals, but I was curious what you thought of the visual effects, like, for instance, when Peter Parker was dealing with all the illusions. Or looking at Mysterio himself. I thought Mysterio looked pretty sweet flying around, honestly.
Mysterio was the best part of the visual effects.
It was a bit of a bummer that it wasn't really him.
Right.
When it comes to find out that it was just an illusion all along, so I was like, oh, like,
yeah, that kind of sucks.
Because in the comic, he is flying around,
right? It almost kind of sucked that it was they made it too much of a 2019 movie. It was an interesting. Well, like for example, it was just a bunch of disgruntled people with a lot of high tech stuff that made illusions, and therefore he wasn't flying around. He didn't have wait, hold on a second.
Taking too much of a literal approach.
Yeah, exactly. You want that fanaticism in a way. That
fantastical element.
Exactly. You want that. And then they robbed us of it. And then they hypothetically maybe have killed him off. And so we can't get it back. Maybe.
Yeah.
So
maybe kind of sort of.
Yeah. I mean, in a sense, like with Batman, the Joker, they made him real and it was believable.
Yeah.
I mean, because Joker's not a superhero. Batman is a superhero, but he's kind of not. He's a regular dude.
He's a regular dude.
Yeah, exactly. So that aspect really, really worked. And the fantasy world of Marvel, I don't think it really works as much. Kind of, let's say, for example, I was thinking about this earlier. Towards like the mid-credits scene, right? So I know we're kind of shifting a little bit gears here, but...
That's okay, Steve.
So you would think that once Peter Parker's identity is revealed to the world, that it's like, oh no, everyone knows he's going to be this 16-year-old kid. But then I thought, man, it's 2019. Everyone's got a cell phone camera. Everyone's recording this, that, the other, and posted on Facebook. There's probably going to get a chance where someone captures Peter Parker with his mask off, and then that would be, but then again, that's also stretching it. It's taken away some of that mystery that you want in the movie with Peter Parker. You want everybody to know your identity, because then at that point, what's the point of wearing a mask?
Well, and that was kind of like the big FU to Peter Parker at the end, was they distributed that video. Now everybody knows the identity of Spider-Man, which I thought was a great cliffhanger. I thought it was a great way to leave that particular film, and then it's going to obviously make me curious to see what the next film entails, because he's going to have to deal with that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
So I took a look at IMDb, and there really there isn't any interesting tidbits at this point in time. So I think we're going to skip that and go right into our final conclusion / rating. I'm going to go first this time.
Go ahead.
Since you were talking there. I thought, like I said at the beginning, I think that this is a fun movie. However, I don't think it's as enjoyable or compelling as Spider-Man Homecoming. Spider-Man Homecoming for me was one of my absolute favorite Spider-Man movies. I would say that one and Spider-Man 2 from the Sam Raimi days are neck and neck. I would probably just bump Spider-Man Homecoming over Spider-Man 2. But that was definitely a film that I was excited about. I wanted to see more of, and that sort of thing. When this came out, I was glad to see Mysterio, and I'm very happy with how Jake performed it. At the same time, though, the way that they approach some of the source material in what we just talked about, where they're trying to explain too much. It almost reminds me of Star Wars Episode 1 when you have Anakin say, "Master Jedi, I've been wondering, what are midi-chlorians?" "Well, Timmy, midi-chlorians are things in your bloodstream." It's like, no, don't do that.
Is it midi-chlorians or midichlorians?
It's midi-chlorians.
Or is it just chlorinians?
It's midi-chlorians. And so what did that do in the Star Wars films? Well, it completely removed this fantasy element of what makes a Jedi. And not only that, but it just didn't make any kind of sense, because then it got all scientific, and it was like, what are you doing? You're
kind of like in The Last Jedi, where they started to give you fuel gauges on...
You're ruining the mythos of the Jedi. So anyway, I think that while this one is not nearly as bad as that, it is in the same direction, in the sense that they're trying to explain away too much of Mysterio in terms of his abilities and what he can do and stuff. And I'm saying you don't have to do that. We're talking about superheroes where, like, a kid who was bit by a radioactive spider suddenly can climb walls and swing through Manhattan with no problem and have super strength. Like, it's okay to have a character like Mysterio who's actually capable of flying and having these different types of illusionary powers and stuff. You can do that. You don't have to do it the way that you guys ended up going. I also really liked how they continued this ecosystem of the Marvel Cinematic Universe with these different characters who you get these little cameos of and stuff. And it makes me wonder how they're going to move forward from here, because they've actually been pretty tight-lipped with what the next phase is going to entail. We obviously know there's a Guardians of the Galaxy 3 that they're working on. Of course, Thor is going to be with them. That's going to be a lot of fun. I look forward to that. But they've been rather mum on just what other movies they have in the pipeline. They have talked about how there are several that they're developing right now. Of course they are, because it's making tons of money. But in terms of this film, I say I'm going to give it 3 stars. Where, like I said, I thought it was fun. I thought it could have been better, but having said that, it was enjoyable in parts. I thought that the sequences where Spider-Man was fighting against Mysterio and his illusions, I thought were some of the best scenes in the entire movie. And I'm not talking about the elementals. I'm talking about, like, when he was surrounded by these different types of worlds and things happening, and he didn't know what the heck was going on. I mean, that right there was straight out of the comics. That was really, really cool. What do you think, Steve?
I think I would have to agree with you on the 3 stars.
Really?
Russ, I really wanted to like this one a lot more, but I think it really held on to Avengers Endgame a little bit too much. And I think our expectations were really high, and I think it fell below expectations. I didn't think it was as funny. I didn't think the action was as good as from Homecoming. I thought Peter Parker kind of fell to, or not Peter Parker, but Tom, well, no, yeah. I think the movie was more about Mysterio and Jake Gyllenhaal more so than Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Or Tom Holland did a great job.
Tom Holland.
It just seemed like he was on a second seat with this movie. It was more about Mysterio, and it was more about Mary Jane, and it was more about other stuff. And it seemed like Spider-Man, Peter Parker, took second spot in his own movie.
That part actually didn't bother me as much, just because he wanted to get away. He wanted a vacation. And especially when you think about the Infinity War and Endgame, he just survived all that. He came back after 5 years of being dust.
But we have a Spider-Man movie that's about him, and then he's taking a second. I didn't care. I was fine with him wanting to get a break and a vacation and just be a 16-year-old kid chasing a girl and having a good... I think that's a great story. I think it's wonderful. However, when everyone else takes the center stage, it's like me saying, Russ, I want to come over to your house. I want to use all your stuff, but could you not be here?
You got the essence of Russ, and that's it.
Exactly. You would most likely be okay with it because you know me, I'm your brother. You trust me, but you would be thinking, why is he asking me to leave my house? It's my house, and that's kind of what I thought. I just thought it could have been scripted better. I wanted it to be funnier. I wanted the action to be better, but that's not saying it was a bad movie. It's just saying that it just fell a little bit below expectations. What I want to see maybe from the third movie is, I want Spider-Man to wear his mask and not have everybody know that he's Peter Parker and a 16-year-old kid. I don't want them to kill off another cool villain. I want them to be action. I still want the humor to be there that we all come to know and love with Spider-Man, and just kind of step away from the Avengers, the MCU. Let's have him have just a movie by himself. That's what I'm looking forward to.
That wraps up this episode of Joygasm. Make sure you tune in next week. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you enjoyed this episode, we invite you to check out patreon.com/Joygasm and consider becoming a monthly contributor. You'll get exclusive perks and early access to the show. Not to mention, it really helps us continue doing what we love to do. Also, you can follow us on social media and YouTube. Just do a search for Joygasm TV. In addition to iTunes and Android, you can listen to our podcast on TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, Spotify, and SoundCloud.com/JoygasmTV. Last but not least, search Joygasm TV on Twitch to see us stream our gaming adventures live every Wednesday night at 9:30 p.m. Central Time. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.